So first thing, take your key, on the ignition, without starting the motor. Look and tell me if you're where you see right here where the immobilizer light would be. Tell me if that starts flashing with the key indicator rapidly flashing. It'll flash somewhere around 2 times a second. That's how you know that your immobilizer is kicking in, doesn't want to start your car because of that. If you're going to turn the key, which I don't think it is this issue because it sounded like it was cranking, but if you go to turn the key and you're pushing in the clutch and it's not cranking, check the clutch switch on the bottom part of the bracket. Let me get under here and show you. So there's 2 switches on the clutch pedal. There is this switch. Oh, I can't really get a good angle. There's this switch right here, which that's gonna turn on and off your cruise control. And then there's a switch over here to the right, and that's gonna control the closing the starter circuit so that you can actually crank the car. You wanna make sure that this plunger is getting full contact when you're pushing the clutch pedal in so that the car will actually start. Now, coming this way to the engine bay, things to check, things to look at. Okay. My car's got a lot of mods, so your engine bay will probably look way different than mine. Let's start on this side. I have my baro sensor over here. Make sure your baro sensor is plugged in and the wiring's intact. Make sure your ground points are good here, 2 over here. There's a ground point here that goes from the body to your lower intake manifold. Down in the bottom on the lower intake manifold, make sure that the vacuum service ports are blocked off so that you don't have a vacuum leak there at your lower intake manifold. Got the baro sensor, okay. Your coolant bottle would be here. If you get it to start and you have the cap off and there's bubbles coming out while the motor is running, that's probably because one of your coolant seals is destroyed and you got gases coming out of the combustion chamber into your coolant system, so that's a bad sign. Make sure your OMP is connected. That's going to be good there. Even though this lower and upper intake manifold union will look different on any 4 ports, these 2 valves will apply. You're going to have your SSV and over here your VDI. They both have vacuum lines that go from their diaphragms to a distribution vacuum chamber in the back half of the upper intake manifold as part of the oil fill assembly. Make sure that those lines are connected with no cracks in them. There's also a line that goes from that chamber to the upper intake manifold that will supply vacuum to that. Make sure that line is connected. It's back in the back over here. Sometimes you can see it between the oil filter and the upper intake manifold. I have my line going from the oil filter neck to my catch can. The breather, I forgot to put it back on. So mine is going vent to atmosphere with it capped off on the intake manifold. On your Canon or factory intake or for other cars, you'll have it go straight from the oil fill neck to here. There was a revision in 2006 and newer that it actually will get routed to the lower intake manifold, and then there's a second line that goes to the intake assembly. I mean, just make sure that all your shit's connected up. There's 2 more lines. One of these lines routes back, goes back behind the alternator, and goes to the vacuum distribution for the oil metering injectors. That is so that the engine under vacuum doesn't siphon oil through the oil metering pump lines. Make sure that that's good. There's no cracks in the line, there's no cracks in the oil metering pump distributor. And then another one of these routes behind the alternator and goes and connects down here to the jet air and that's gonna do idle control. Make sure that line is intact, and then where it comes back around and goes into the lower intake manifold, make sure that line is connected, there's no cracks or leaks, so that you're not getting off readings in a vacuum leak at any point in the RPM range. But so that's going to be the three intake manifold ports. Make sure your mass airflow sensor is good and clean. Spray it clean with mass airflow sensor cleaner. On 2004, 2005 model years, there was a lot of issues where sometimes you'd get oil get coughed up from the oil fill into this port, and it would dirty the whole intake track and the mass airflow sensor. That's why I just capped this off and I routed this line to an oil catch can, so that I'm not going to keep dirtying up my airflow sensor, giving myself issues. Coming back down, you have your eccentric shaft sensor. Make sure the sensor is clean, it's seated properly. It's very important that it lines up correctly with the teeth on the E-shaft for the position gear, whatever you call it. I can't think right now. That's going to be critical to make sure that it is trying to spark at the correct point in rotation. Now, to one of the things that we were curious about, the ignition coils, and the wires, and which way they go. First coil, green wire. Second coil, you can see it's like a brownish color. It looks like it could be dirty. Someone somewhere has the manual. Third wire in the back, and it looks like a yellowish color. And then the last one looks like a two-coat color, possibly greenish color. Again, it's dirty, it's hard to really tell, but this should hopefully at least help you figure out which one goes where. As far as the wires are concerned, you're gonna have leading. This is a leading front rotor, trailing front rotor, leading second rotor or back rotor, trailing second rotor or back rotor. So you got the colors up here. Now important, make sure that you have front rotor leading, front rotor trailing, rear rotor leading, rear rotor trailing. Make sure that the connections for your alternator are nice and tight and snug, nothing's loose, that you're getting good connection over here. Make sure your airflow sensor is plugged in. Also, brake booster line, make sure you don't have a vacuum leak up here and that this line is good and secure. You're going to have your fuel rail, fuel line. This is going to connect, go underneath the intake manifold. Make sure that your injectors are properly seated. Doesn't hurt to possibly switch them out with another set if you can find some online for cheap enough. Usually you can get a full set of injectors anywhere between $65 and $100 within the United States for the Rx8 for the 6 injectors, the 2 reds and 4 yellows. Yeah, that's all I can really think of as far as what would make it or not make it start. A little bit lengthy of a video, but you kind of get the picture. So I mean, everything's been gone over. I mean, motor really only needs a couple things. It needs air, fuel, and ignition or spark source. So air is taken care of. The spark source is going to be your coils. Make sure everything's connected properly. Make sure your spark plugs are good. The wires are wired in correctly. The coils have the correct plug put into each one. The last thing would just be your fuel pump. Make sure that none of your fuses are blown so that it's actually getting delivered fuel. A good way to check to see if you're actually getting fuel or not, honestly, just get an adapter and plug a sensor in there. If you don't plug a pressure sensor or something to see and make sure you're actually getting fuel, then you're just wasting your time. Also get a spark plug tester, test the coils out, make sure the coils are still good. because you can put coils in there, but it's known even Mazda genuine coils sometimes are delivered and they're dead on arrival and they just suck and don't fire good. If you don't have good spark, the car's not going to start. So last thing, check your battery grounds, make sure that your connections to your battery are good and solid. That's going to affect your cranking speed, and that's going to affect your electrical system on your ECU on whether it's getting a good signal so it can start or not. So you saw everything on my car, everything's checked out, it's a cold start. I got a small battery relocated in the trunk, and you'll see starts no problem. Now, tire pressure sensors are dead, and check engine light is because of I did a catalytic delete. I'm running a mid pipe, and I got rid of the secondary air injection pump. So that's why my check engine light is on, but it's running good. And so even with some things that could throw a check engine light, the car should still start. If it doesn't start, do a compression test, a proper compression test using a rotary compression tester. You can go to rotarycompressiontester.com and get one from Steve Miracle. Great guy, solid product. I own one, best purchase I've ever made as far as being able to routinely, whenever I want, just check my car, make sure it's running good. He can provide full instructions on how to utilize his tester if you have any questions about that. But yeah, that's it. Let's end my rambling at this 12-minute video. Thanks.